Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most significant and shocking developments in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. A brand new front has just opened, dramatically changing the dynamics of this war. For months, the fighting has been concentrated in the east and south of Ukraine, but now reports are emerging that a new axis of combat is taking shape, creating fresh challenges for both sides and sending shockwaves across Europe. This new front could mark a major turning point in the war and possibly reshape the entire balance of power in the region. For nearly 3 years, Ukraine has been fighting to defend its sovereignty against Russia's full-scale invasion. The war has seen countless shifts, from the early Russian push towards Kiev to Ukraine's counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson, and the long and brutal battles in places like Bakhmut and Avdiivka. But now, it appears something different is unfolding. Intelligence sources, satellite imagery, and on-the-ground footage suggest that a new front has opened in the north, near the border regions of Sumy and Chernihiv, or possibly even involving Belarusian territory. This sudden escalation has caught many analysts off guard, raising questions about Moscow's true intentions and whether Ukraine can stretch its already strained resources to meet this new challenge. Initial reports indicate that Russian forces have launched cross-border incursions using mechanized units and artillery fire to test Ukrainian defenses in the north. Unlike previous assaults that aimed for deep territorial gains, this new offensive appears designed to force Ukraine to divert its troops away from the Donbas and Zaporizhia fronts. If that's true, it's a calculated move, one meant to weaken Ukraine's counterattack capabilities in the south and open vulnerabilities elsewhere. However, Ukrainian military officials claim they anticipated such a move, saying they've been fortifying the northern borders for months in preparation for exactly this kind of Russian maneuver. The significance of this new front goes beyond geography. Opening a new line of attack changes the psychological and strategic landscape of the war. For Ukraine, it means defending a much longer border and protecting new civilian populations that had enjoyed relative calm since 2022. For Russia, it's an attempt to regain initiative after months of limited progress and heavy losses. The Kremlin likely hopes that creating a new front will stretch Ukrainian forces thin and potentially cause internal strain within Kiev's command structure. It's also possible that Russia is trying to distract Ukraine while preparing a larger offensive elsewhere, perhaps aiming to exploit gaps once Ukraine's forces redeploy northward. But this move carries enormous risks for Moscow. The Russian military is already exhausted, facing manpower shortages and logistical struggles. Opening another front demands more troops, supplies, and coordination, things Russia has been struggling with since the early months of the war. If Ukraine manages to hold the line and inflict significant losses, this could backfire badly on Russia, exposing just how overextended its forces have become. On the other hand, if Ukraine can't contain this push quickly, Russia could establish new staging grounds to threaten Kiev once again, reviving fears of a renewed attack on the capital. Another critical question is whether Belarus is involved or merely being used as a launchpad. Satellite images and local sources report increased military activity along the Belarus-Ukraine border, including Russian troop movements and the presence of heavy equipment. If Belarus were to become directly engaged, that would represent a dramatic escalation. However, Belarusian officials deny any participation, insisting their territory is not being used for active combat. Still, Lukashenko's regime has long allowed Russian troops to operate from Belarusian soil, and intelligence agencies have confirmed that drones and missiles have once again been launched from that area. This raises fears that Minsk might be preparing to enter the conflict more openly under pressure from Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukraine's allies are watching closely. NATO officials have convened emergency consultations to assess whether this new front poses broader security risks to the alliance. Poland and the Baltic states, in particular, are alarmed by any military buildup near their borders. They've called for increased surveillance and additional troop deployments along the alliance's eastern flank. The United States and the European Union have also reaffirmed their support for Ukraine, pledging to accelerate deliveries of air defense systems, artillery shells, and long-range missiles to help Kyiv withstand the expanding conflict. On the ground, the situation remains fluid. Ukrainian commanders report fierce fighting in multiple northern sectors, with Russian forces attempting to probe weaknesses. Villages near the border have been evacuated, and emergency services are responding to new waves of shelling. Videos shared online show long convoys of Ukrainian reinforcements heading north, suggesting that Kyiv is taking the threat seriously. At the same time, Ukrainian drones have been striking logistical hubs deep inside Russian territory, perhaps as a form of retaliation or deterrence to slow down the advance. Strategically, analysts believe this development might also be connected to the shifting political climate inside Russia. Facing growing dissent and economic strain, the Kremlin could be seeking a dramatic military gesture to demonstrate strength both at home and abroad. Opening a new front allows Putin to claim that the initiative is once again in Russian hands, portraying Ukraine as being on the defensive. But behind this show of aggression lies a deeper sense of desperation. Russia's casualty numbers continue to climb, and many of its elite units have been depleted beyond repair. If the new front fails to produce tangible gains, it could deepen the perception of failure within Russia's own military circles. For Ukraine, the challenge is daunting but not insurmountable. The Ukrainian army has proven remarkably adaptable throughout the war, learning from each battle and improving its defensive strategies. Advanced Western equipment, combined with superior morale and battlefield intelligence, gives Ukraine a fighting chance to contain this latest offensive. Still, it's a race against time as winter approaches. Logistics become harder, and every kilometer of front line becomes critical. Ukrainian leaders are urging their allies to maintain focus and not allow fatigue or political distractions to erode support at this pivotal moment. Internationally, this development has reignited debate over how the war could end. Some believe that Russia's decision to open new fronts shows it has no intention of negotiating, instead betting on wearing Ukraine down over time. Others argue that this is a sign of weakness, a desperate gamble that could collapse under its own weight. Either way, the war is clearly entering a new and dangerous phase. The coming weeks will likely reveal whether this northern escalation is a short-lived distraction or the beginning of a broader and more complex campaign. As global tensions rise, one thing remains clear: Ukraine continues to fight for its survival, and every new front opened against it underscores the immense human and strategic cost of this conflict. The world watches as soldiers and civilians once again brace for the unknown, hoping that resilience and international unity will prevail over aggression and destruction. The new front in Ukraine is not just a military maneuver, it's a signal that the struggle for Europe's future stability is far from over, and that the next chapter in this brutal war has just begun.